Jerusalem, a city sacred to three faiths, fought over for centuries. The Crusaders seized it in 1099, only to lose it less than a century later to Saladin. But imagine for a moment that they never lost it, that the cross continued to fly over the holy city, century after century. What kind of world would we live in today? To understand this alternate world, we must first change one crucial moment in history. In our timeline, Saladin's victory at Hattin in 1187 crushed Crusader power. But what if the Crusaders had won that battle? What if they had better logistics, stronger leadership, or chose a different battleground? We imagine Guy of Lusignan defeating Saladin on the plains of Hattin. Saladin's army breaks. The Sultan himself is captured. The Muslim forces of Egypt and Syria are thrown into chaos, creating a significant power vacuum. Jerusalem remains firmly under Crusader control, and the Kingdom of Jerusalem becomes the dominant power in the Eastern Mediterranean. Instead of retreating, the Crusaders consolidate. With the riches of pilgrimage, trade through acre, and Western support, the kingdom transforms into a hybrid state. It becomes part Latin, part Levantine, a Christian bulwark surrounded by Islamic empires. By the 13th century, this alternate Jerusalem has matured. It's not a fragile colony anymore, it's a thriving, multicultural kingdom. European settlers continue to arrive, but instead of displacing locals, many intermarry with Eastern Christians and even Arab converts. The city becomes a melting pot of Latin, Greek, and Arabic influences, creating a unique Levantine identity. The Crusaders adopt local technologies, irrigation, medicine, and architecture, enhancing their daily lives and infrastructure. Churches rise beside ancient synagogues and mosques, some transformed but others left intact as part of negotiated coexistence. Politically, the kingdom survives because it learns to balance diplomacy with faith, a crucial adaptation for its longevity. Treaties with the Ayyubids, and later the Mamluks, maintain vital trade routes and pilgrims' access. The Crusader nobles even learn Arabic and employ Muslim scholars as advisors, fostering intellectual exchange. It's a kingdom that feels less like medieval Europe and more like a fusion between the West and the East. With Jerusalem secure, the Crusades change shape entirely, shifting from conquest to support and profit. Instead of launching new expeditions, Europe channels its energy into supporting and profiting from the Holy Land. The Italian city-states, Venice, Genoa, Pisa, build vast trade empires, linking the Mediterranean to Asia through Jerusalem. This means earlier contact with the Silk Road. Spices, silk, and knowledge flow westward centuries before they did in our timeline. The Crusader ports become Europe's main gateway to the East, accelerating technological and intellectual exchange. While in our world, the Renaissance began in Italy, in this alternate one it may have begun in the Levant. In cities like Acre, Tyre, and Jerusalem itself, where Latin monks translated Arabic scientific works directly from their sources. But no power survives unchallenged. The Muslim world would not have stood still. The defeat of Saladin creates power vacuums. Egypt may fall into internal strife earlier, leading to fragmentation. Without the unifying force of jihad, the Islamic world becomes fragmented, lacking a strong central authority. The Mongol invasions later strike a divided Middle East, perhaps allowing the Crusader states to survive them by diplomacy or tribute. By the 14th century, however, a new Islamic power, perhaps the Ottomans or a revived Egyptian dynasty, would inevitably set its sights on the Holy Land. Yet by then, Jerusalem is no longer an isolated Crusader outpost. It's a Christian-majority kingdom, reinforced by centuries of settlement and trade. The result? A frontier state, fortified and wealthy, able to resist Ottoman domination, a kind of Christian Israel before Israel ever existed. This alternate history paints a vivid picture of a Middle East profoundly shaped by a single, pivotal change, demonstrating the delicate balance of power and culture throughout history. If the Holy Land remained open under Christian rule, would Europe have ever needed to discover new routes to Asia? This question lies at the heart of understanding the motivations behind some of history's most transformative voyages. Possibly not. One of the major motives for the Age of Exploration was finding a way around hostile Muslim powers blocking traditional land and sea trade routes to the east. These blockades created immense pressure on European merchants and monarchs to seek alternative pathways for valuable goods like spices, silks, and precious metals. But in this alternate world, the Crusader kingdom maintains direct, secure, and open land and sea connections to Asia. Jerusalem, under Christian control, would serve as a vital intermediary, facilitating a continuous flow of goods and ideas between East and West without the need for perilous detours. Without that intense pressure to bypass existing routes, Portugal and Spain might not have raced westward across the Atlantic. Figures like Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama, driven by the quest for new trade routes, might never have embarked on their historic voyages, or at least not with the same urgency and backing.
The Americas, in this timeline, could have remained untouched by European empires for much longer, preserving indigenous cultures and ecosystems. Alternatively, they might have been reached much later, perhaps through Middle Eastern navigation and trade networks extending eastward, rather than the direct Atlantic crossings initiated by European powers.
This fundamental shift would mean the global balance of power remains centered on the Mediterranean, not the Atlantic. The economic and political gravity of the world would continue to reside in the ancient crossroads of Europe, Africa, and Asia, rather than shifting towards the burgeoning Atlantic powers. The heart of global commerce would thus sit firmly between the great cities of Cairo, Jerusalem, and Constantinople. These vibrant hubs would become even more central to international trade, cultural exchange, and political influence, fostering a different kind of interconnectedness. Beyond trade and exploration, a Christian Jerusalem would also have profoundly reshaped the spiritual map of Europe. Its continued existence as a Christian stronghold would have had deep theological and political implications for the entire continent. With the Crusader kingdom standing as a permanent symbol of Christian unity and triumph, the papacy might have held even greater prestige and unchallenged authority across Europe. The successful retention of the Holy City could have solidified its spiritual and temporal power for centuries. Consequently, the Protestant Reformation, which challenged papal authority, could have been significantly delayed or even weakened in its initial impact. Alternatively, the very moral corruption that fueled the Reformation might have been redirected towards the perceived abuses or excesses of Crusader rule itself, leading to a different kind of religious upheaval. Yet paradoxically, the long-term coexistence between Christians and Muslims within a stable Crusader Jerusalem might have fostered a unique environment that softened religious fanaticism. Daily interactions and shared governance could have led to a more nuanced understanding between faiths. A more tolerant and cosmopolitan Christian East, accustomed to living alongside diverse religious communities, could have influenced Europe toward coexistence rather than persecution. This could have fundamentally altered the tone and outcomes of both the Reformation and the subsequent Counter-Reformation, leading to a less religiously fractured continent. Let's leap forward to the modern age, to the 20th and 21st centuries. What does a Crusader Jerusalem look like in this contemporary world? How would its enduring presence have shaped the geopolitical landscape of today? It likely becomes a constitutional monarchy, perhaps modeled on European lines, backed by Western powers and deeply tied to European diplomacy. This enduring kingdom would serve as a crucial buffer state, mediating between East and West and maintaining a delicate balance in a volatile region. Instead of the Arab-Israeli conflict as we know it, we might see a complex, multicultural kingdom. This state would be tasked with balancing the interests and identities of Latin Christians, Eastern Christians, Jewish communities, and Muslim populations under shared, unified governance structure, fostering a unique societal model. The Ottoman Empire, which historically controlled much of the Middle East for centuries, might never have ruled this region. This absence would mean the entire map of the modern Middle East, with its current national boundaries and political entities, would be utterly unrecognizable. The borders drawn by European colonizers in the 20th century, which created nations like Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan, might instead belong to an unbroken kingdom of Jerusalem. This unified entity could stretch from the Mediterranean coast deep into the interior, perhaps even to the Jordan River, creating a powerful and historically unique state. And perhaps, in this alternate world, the Holy City truly is a city of peace. Not because it miraculously escaped conflict, but because centuries of shared rule, negotiation, and the necessity of daily interaction forced its diverse peoples to learn and practice coexistence, forging a unique identity rooted in shared history. History is never inevitable. It is a tapestry woven from countless choices and contingencies. The Crusaders' dream of an eternal Jerusalem, in our timeline, ultimately collapsed under the immense weight of ambition, fervent faith, and the tragic cost of blood. But imagining what might have been, exploring these fascinating what-if scenarios, reminds us of how fragile and contingent our real history is. It underscores that the world we inhabit today is just one of many possible outcomes, shaped by pivotal moments and decisions. If the Crusaders had kept Jerusalem forever, the world might indeed have looked more united, with a stronger east-west connection and a different religious landscape. Conversely, it might have been even more divided, with new conflicts arising from different power dynamics and unresolved tensions. But one thing is certain, regardless of the path taken, history would still find a way to surprise us, to unfold in unexpected ways, and to present new challenges and opportunities that we could never fully predict. Thank you for joining us on this journey through an alternate history, imagining a world where the Crusaders held Jerusalem forever. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to follow us for more deep dives into history, real and imagined. Share your thoughts in the comments. How do you think the world would look if Jerusalem had remained under the Crusaders' cross? Until next time, keep exploring, keep imagining, and remember, history is a story that's always worth telling.